Welcome to our channel. Listen to short audiobooks every day and improve yourself.
Andrew Leigh, The Shortest History of Economics. Have you ever wondered how we got from hunter-gatherer societies to our complex global economy? This takes you on a journey through pivotal moments that shaped our economic world and the concepts economists use to understand them. You'll learn how early innovations like agriculture, specialization, and trade laid the groundwork for civilization, how the Industrial Revolution changed everything, and how central banks keep national economies in check. So, whether you're a history buff, a curious mind, or just someone who wants to make sense of today's economic headlines, this will explore the ideas and innovations that continue to drive our world. Seeds of growth. Let's start at the beginning, shall we? Homo sapiens first emerged in southern Africa approximately 300,000 years ago. Our early ancestors were innovative, developing complex languages, creating art, and organizing into family units and larger tribal groups. By 65,000 years ago, they had invented tools like spears and bows for hunting, needles for sewing, and even rudimentary boats for water travel. Their lifestyle was largely nomadic. They roamed vast territories, hunting game and gathering local plants, moving on once resources in an area were depleted. This pattern of existence persisted for millennia, shaping our species' early history. Our economic odyssey begins around 10,000 BC with the agricultural revolution as the hunter-gatherer societies shifted to settled farming communities. Agriculture created, for the first time, the possibility of surplus production. Communities could produce more food than they immediately needed, opening the door to a revolutionary economic concept: consumption smoothing. Farmers could now store food for lean times, effectively maintaining a more stable level of consumption despite seasonal fluctuations in production, helping to ease the constant stress of food insecurity that had plagued our ancestors. But it wasn't all upside. Early farmers often suffered from less diverse diets and increased vulnerability to diseases due to higher population density. Surplus production paved the way for specialization. With not everyone needed for food production, some could focus on developing other skills, like tool-making or pottery. This diversification of labor led to increased productivity and the emergence of trade as people exchanged their specialized goods and services. As trade expanded, a new economic tool emerged: money. Money serves three functions: a unit of account, a store of value, and a medium of exchange. Early forms range from precious metals to carved stones, each solving the problem of facilitating complex trades without requiring a direct match of bartered goods. Trade itself allows us to exploit what economists call comparative advantage, a principle showing that mutually beneficial exchange is possible when each party focuses on producing what they're relatively better at, leading to greater productivity overall. So, there you have it, 5 economic innovations: surplus production, consumption smoothing, specialization, money, and trade based on comparative advantage. These formed the bedrock of human economic development. They transformed human societies from small, vulnerable groups into complex, interconnected civilizations capable of all kinds of remarkable feats. A revolutionary invention. Let's talk about another innovation, beloved here at Blinkist. The printing press. Invented around 1440, the printing press wasn't just a technological marvel, it was an economic revolution in disguise. Imagine a world where owning a single book was a luxury that only elites could afford, each book painstakingly hand-copied by scribes over months. Then suddenly, books began to proliferate. The invention of movable type slashed costs. A book that once cost a year's wages now cost only a week's pay. This flood of accessible knowledge catalyzed innovation across Europe, spurring economic growth in ways that would ripple through the centuries. But let's back up a moment. Before the printing press, trade was already being reshaped by something else: water transport. Rivers and seas became highways of commerce, with coastal cities emerging as economic powerhouses. China's Grand Canal, stretching over 1,600 kilometers, exemplified how waterways could knit together vast regions economically. Venice flourished as a global trading hub. It boasted a strategic location and innovative financial systems like the colleganza, a risk-sharing agreement for sea voyages. Lisbon's deep water port made it a launchpad for explorers, while Alexandria's lighthouse guided ships laden with goods from across the known world. Yet the printing press traded in a different kind of wealth: ideas. Ideas, unlike physical goods, are what economists call non-rival. If I give you my apple, I no longer have it. That's a rival good. But if I teach you a new skill, I still have the skill myself. That's non-rival. This concept of non-rivalry is crucial to understanding innovation's economic impact. As literacy rates soared, more people could access and contribute to the growing pool of knowledge. Innovations in one field could spark breakthroughs in another. Yet this explosion of ideas posed a new economic challenge: how to incentivize innovation while ensuring that knowledge spread. Venice's 1474 patent statute was a pioneering attempt to strike this balance, offering inventors temporary monopolies in exchange for sharing their ideas. Industry and early economics. Before the Industrial Revolution, economic progress was slow. For centuries, growth crept along, but while it gradually sustained larger and larger populations, individual living standards remained stagnant. In the 18th century, however, all of that changed. A perfect storm of innovation began to sweep first across England and then the world, setting off a self-reinforcing cycle of progress. This cycle worked like a vast, interconnected machine. Agricultural advancements freed up labor, fueling a boom in urban populations. Cities thus became crucibles of commerce and innovation, their dense networks sparking new ideas and enterprises. These innovations, in turn, drove further agricultural and industrial efficiency. Let's take one example: the invention of the steam engine. This led to more efficient mining, providing cheaper access to coal. This cheaper coal then powered, more steam engines, of course. These were then used in factories, creating a positive feedback loop of industrialization and urbanization. Among all of this was Adam Smith's book, The Wealth of Nations, which introduced the concept of the invisible hand. This metaphor describes how, in a free market, individual self-interest can lead, quite incidentally, to societal benefits. When people pursue their own goals in a competitive market, they're inadvertently led to provide goods and services that others value, as if guided by an invisible hand. This insight helped explain how market economies could function to create wealth in a decentralized way. John Stuart Mill further refined economic thought with two crucial concepts: his model of Homo economicus, portraying humans as rational, self-interested economic agents, became a cornerstone of economic analysis. While obviously a simplification, this model provided a useful framework for predicting economic behavior and designing policies. It's the reason economists assume people will generally respond to incentives in predictable ways. Mill also introduced the idea of opportunity cost, the value of the next best alternative that we forego when we make a decision. For example, the opportunity cost of attending university isn't just the tuition fees, but also the income you could have earned working full-time instead. This concept helps us understand the true cost of our choices in a world of scarcity. Meanwhile, the Industrial Revolution continued, with a dark underbelly manifested in urban poverty and harsh working conditions. The Poor Laws, dating back to Elizabethan times but amended in 1834, attempted to address these issues through a system of parish-based relief. The workhouse system was a key part of this, providing food and shelter to the destitute in exchange for labor. However, conditions in workhouses were intentionally harsh to discourage all but the most desperate from seeking help, often leading to cruelty and counterproductive results. These economic ideas and social challenges shaped the Industrial Revolution and continue to influence our understanding of economics today. They remind us both that progress is possible and that it often comes with complex trade-offs and unintended consequences. Managing capitalism. World War I was perhaps the world's first fully industrialized war. It was a calamity, not just of human suffering and geopolitical upheaval, but in terms of setting the stage for profound economic turmoil. Its aftermath saw Germany burdened with crippling reparations, leading to hyperinflation, while the 1929 stock market crash ushered in the Great Depression, sending shockwaves through the global economy. In response to this crisis, two competing economic philosophies emerged, shaping the discourse for decades to come. John Maynard Keynes advocated for active government intervention, arguing that increased public spending could stimulate economic recovery. He proposed that during downturns, governments should increase spending on public works and other programs to boost demand and employment. Keynes likened the economy to a beehive, where one bee's thrift could lead to colony-wide misery, illustrating how individual actions can have unexpected collective consequences. In contrast, Friedrich von Hayek viewed recessions as necessary corrections for imprudent investments. He argued that artificially low interest rates led to poor investment decisions, and that allowing these investments to fail was a crucial part of economic renewal. Hayek saw government intervention as potentially harmful, delaying necessary adjustments and risking long-term economic distortions. These divergent views reflected deeper philosophical differences. Keynes, the optimistic cosmopolitan, believed in the power of government to smooth economic cycles. Hayek, more austere and reserved, feared that government intervention could erode individual liberty and lead to unintended negative consequences. Transforming economic analysis during this period was national income accounting, a systematic approach to measuring a nation's economic output, income, and expenditure. Pioneers like Arthur Bowley, Colin Clark, and Simon Kuznets developed methods to calculate economic indicators like gross national product, GNP. These tools enabled more accurate measurement of the nation's economic output, facilitating timely policy interventions and allowing for meaningful comparisons between countries and over time. In the wake of World War II, the Bretton Woods Conference established a new international economic order. This system aimed to prevent the economic isolationism that had exacerbated the Great Depression. The World Bank and International Monetary Fund were created to provide institutional support for market-based international development as well as financial stability. A modified gold standard was implemented, with the US dollar pegged to gold and other currencies pegged to the dollar, creating a framework for stable exchange rates. This new order promoted international trade and capital flows, laying the groundwork for the growth of post-war economies. Global development and inequality. In the latter half of the 20th century, central banks emerged as key players in managing national economies. The spectre of hyperinflation, which had ravaged countries like post-World War II Hungary, prompted policymakers to seek more flexible monetary tools. This led many nations to abandon the rigid gold standard, which had limited their ability to respond to economic crises. The 1980s marked a turning point, with central banks increasingly gaining independence from political interference. This shift aimed to prevent the manipulation of interest rates for short-term political gain, a practice that had often led to boom and bust cycles corresponding, not coincidentally, with election years. New Zealand pioneered inflation targeting in 1990, with its government requiring the central bank to keep inflation between 0 and 2%. This approach quickly spread, with most central banks adopting similar targets, typically around 2% inflation per year. interest rates became the primary tool for controlling inflation and economic activity. By adjusting these rates, central banks could influence borrowing and spending throughout the economy. Lower rates encourage investment and consumption, while higher rates cool an overheating economy. This delicate balancing act requires central bankers to anticipate economic trends and act preemptively, not always an easy feat. Alongside these changes came new theories of economic development. Justin Yifu Lin, who defected from Taiwan to mainland China before becoming a prominent economist, proposed that successful developing countries combined market orientation with proactive state guidance. This approach involved identifying industries with comparative advantages and providing targeted support through infrastructure investment and research funding. Lin argued that this strategy was key to the rapid growth of East Asian economies. Mariana Mazzucato, an economist at University College London, complemented this view by highlighting the crucial role of government-funded missions in driving technological innovation. She pointed out that many breakthroughs often attributed to the private sector, such as the Internet, actually stemmed from state-led initiatives. As the global economy grew, so did concerns about inequality. Serbian-born economist Branko Milanovic's research on global income distribution revealed a stark picture of uneven growth. His findings showed that between 1980 to 2016, while the global middle class, particularly in emerging economies like China and India, experienced significant income gains, those in the lower middle income brackets of developed countries saw stagnation or even decline. Meanwhile, the world's top earners, especially the top 1%, enjoyed spectacular growth in their incomes. This pattern of growth highlighted the complex effects of globalization and technological change on different segments of the global population. Factors influencing equality include education, union strength, progressive taxation, and the balance between economic growth and returns on capital. The Shortest History of Economics by Andrew Leigh is that the human story is one of innovation and adaptation. From the agricultural revolution to the digital age, humans have developed new tools and systems to address scarcity and meet our needs. Key innovations like specialization, money, and trade formed the bedrock of early economic development. The Industrial Revolution accelerated progress while introducing new challenges. Central banks emerged as crucial economic managers, while debates between interventionist and free market approaches continue to rage, shaping policy and politics alike.